On the promotional team, you've chosen boxer. Why?
Why boxer? Because every other promoter out here is a scumbag. That's why. You know, you've got Frank Warren behind me, been lying and cheating his way through boxing for the last couple decades. Sued me for a couple $100,000 a few years ago, so obviously I was never going to go with him. You know, the guy's a scumbag. Calais Sauerland, you know, had me locked up.
Speak up, I can't hear you.
Calais Sauerland had me locked up in a terrible contract for the last few years, squeezing money out of me at every opportunity. Scumbag. Eddie Hearn, Frank Smith. They did everything they could to try and make this fight against Conor Ben still go ahead. Still go ahead.
Why'd you fight Hamza Red scumbag?
After knowing that they, that he was on steroids. Scumbags, you know. I would say the only promoter that I know for sure isn't a scumbag is His Excellency, Turki Al-Sheikh.
We're going to get back to that in a second. I'm actually going to replay it again just so you can hear it properly and just to make sure that you've heard it. But what's going on here is sort of a dispute between Chris Eubank Jr. and Frank Warren. Now, there's warranted claims against Frank Warren for years where he wasn't able to pay the fighters. And that can go from one reason or another. Obviously, there are budget issues within promotional companies, whether they would be big or small. But when you have someone like Turki Al-Sheikh, he has absolutely unlimited funds and he can afford to really not be a scumbag. But we're also going to talk about Simon Jordan and his claims of, let's say, being against the Saudis, having this entire show going on, and basically some sort of xenophobic, nationalistic feelings that he has behind it. Oh, we have to preserve the British culture and whatnot. Speaking of preservation, obviously you guys seen the way that I'm dressed today. I got my khakis on with my Nike Cortez, and as you know, that right there is a little bit of an old school West Coast flavor. But it is a style that is being preserved nowadays because, quite frankly, there's a lot of kids in the new generation within the hip-hop urban community right now whose fathers from the previous generation, which is my generation, that sort of took that style and ran with it all the way from the 80s and 90s and now being preserved today. So there is a certain argument that people may have when it comes to, let's say, preserving a certain culture. But I'm going to get to that in a second because I believe Turki Al-Sheikh has sort of preserved the British culture of boxing. For example, the Sweet Caroline songs that they played just right before the fights. The Liam Gallagher concert that they had going on right before the Dubois and AJ fight. Let me play this again just so that you guys can get full context of this, and we're going to play.
On the promotional team, you've chosen boxer. Why?
Why boxer? Because every other promoter out here is a scumbag. That's why. You know, you've got Frank Warren behind me. Just a couple of decades. Sued me for a couple $100,000 years ago, so obviously I was never going to go with him. The guy's a scumbag. Calais Sauerland, had me locked up.
Speak up, I can't hear you.
Calais Sauerland had me locked up in a terrible contract for the last few years, squeezing money out of me at every opportunity. Scumbag. Eddie Hearn, Frank Smith, they did everything they could to try and make this fight against Conor Ben still go ahead. Still go ahead.
Why'd you fight Hamza Red scumbag?
After knowing that they, that he was on steroids. Scumbags, you know. I would would say the only promoter that I know for sure isn't a scumbag.
And by the way, right here, this is where he is about to tell you which promoter is not a scumbag, which, by the way, relates to this whole entire Simon Jordan story.
Is His Excellency, Turkey Al-Sheikh. You know, this is a man who isn't trying to take money from fighters. He isn't trying to use lawyers and accountants to lock fighters up in slave contracts. You know, he's a man of God. He's a man of religion. That's what's most important to the people of Saudi Arabia. He just wants to put the biggest fights on, the best events on, and pay fighters what they're worth. And as a fighter, you know, it's a blessing to be a fighter at this moment in time, because this is the first time we've ever had a promoter like this in the history of boxing.
He's correct about that. Hold on.
Oh, and, you know, Ben Shalom's a very cool guy too.
Welcome back, Chris. Harmony.
All right, so that is all that we have for Chris Eubank.
Welcome back, Chris. Harmony in the room, as expected. On the promotional team.
Yeah, so that's what we have for Chris Eubank. Now, let's go to the Coogan IFL interview with Frank Warren going off on Simon Jordan. By the way, these two relate with each other, right? What Chris Eubank is saying about Turkey Al-Sheikh, literally, Frank Warren is confirming in this interview right here. Now, we can go on about Frank Warren's mishaps over the years. We're going to get to that in a second. But first, this. Because Frank Warren has had a few mishaps all throughout his career when it came to not paying fighters on time. This is a very prevalent issue that Frank Warren has going on. And he has nobody to thank but Turkey Al-Sheikh to literally bail him out. The Sheikh, Turkey, is literally the guy that bailed everybody out. The $20 million that they had to spend for UFC's Noche, guess who bailed them out? The Saudis, and in particular, Turkey Al-Sheikh's command. Okay, so Simon Jordan, let's get into some context here. He doesn't like that the Saudis are taking over boxing because there's political controversies behind the Saudis like any regime in the world. And that goes without saying that there have been people that have gotten hurt due to their, let's say, political turmoil or lack of political support on their side as some sort of reprisal. I'm going to play this to you right now just so you can get context into what is going on. Okay, let's play this right here.
We're on now, and it's going to be great.
Right, Frank, I do want to ask you about an article that came online over the last 12 hours or whatever it was from Simon Jordan.
Here we go.
You would have read that. I just wanted your response to that. There were some quite strong opinions in there. Well, so, one second, read you the headline of this. Second. Right, so this was the headline to the article. Simon Jordan, we must stop selling our sporting soul to the Saudis who have undermined free speech in this country and must respect...
First of all, how did the Saudis undermine free speech in Great Britain? They can't undermine free speech at all because it's not their jurisdiction.
Our history and culture. That was the headline of the article.
Before I answer how I feel about it, he has been champion Ben Shalom, to my knowledge, for a long, long time. I know he's been out and helping Ben Shalom raise money for his business, and at one stage was going to be his chairman of his companies, so I understand. You've heard him a few times saying he was coming into boxing. So going out and raising money for somebody who sat on that table and gave praise for Ben Shalom did, like we all did, for the involvement of Riyadh Season, His Excellency, was what's his opinion on that now? And what's he going to be telling those people he's raising money for about that? As for, was it about selling our soul? How have we sold our soul? Was that not a great night for British boxing then? Or world boxing, British boxing at Wembley? Did the fans get entertained? Did they enjoy their night? Was it fantastic? You know, Liam Gallagher on there, if you're into music, you know, British, massive part of them.
So this is what I mean. All the claims that Simon Jordan has going on, really, I mean, let's be honest, right? Are they really undermining British culture by bringing in Liam Gallagher, who, by the way, with Oasis, was one of the biggest bands out of Britain in the 1990s?
Biggest band, what's it, the 90s and 20s in Britain? You know, British night, an all-British heavyweight title fight, which he would have been complaining about if it had been in Saudi.
And that's another thing. It's not in Saudi Arabia. That was one of the claims that many people had when it came to, let's say, the Saudis taking over boxing. They're saying that all the big events are just going to be in Saudi Arabia, though. Well, not so fast, because guess what? The Saudis, their whole entire treasure chest is so extensive that they can't afford to have shows in Los Angeles, have shows in Las Vegas, which is UFC Noche. And by the way, did they do anything to undermine the Mexican culture during their presentation of UFC's Noche? No, they didn't. They didn't add their whole entire culture into it. They didn't go and have a Saudi Arabian historical video package with Lawrence of Arabia or anything like that. They literally focused primarily on Mexican Independence Day, which was the theme of the overall event, which they just happened to have sponsored and helped put money in.
You've got to find something and knock it all the time. And it's not like it's coming from his heart about Saudi Arabia, because he was wanting to go and meet His Excellency last week, but he got blown off. Now, if he feels so bad about it, if he's what he's saying and he feels so strong about it, and this big high ground he's got, why does he not go to TalkSports and say, you know what, I'm resigning because you bought those fights?
Wow. Thank you, Frank Warren. That right there is on point right there. So why don't you resign if one of your co-hosts or your entire network that covered the fight basically were in bed or sold their souls to the Saudis? Now you're doing absolutely the same thing. I'll tell you why you won't do that. Because it's a great position that you have in TalkSports right now. You are literally the white British version of Stephen A. Smith. And as a result of that, well, because of that, the reason why you are the Stephen A. Smith of the UK is because of TalkSports and the notoriety and the fame that you got out of it, not to mention also your football career or soccer career, as they call it, right? Either way, all of that, yes, it adds on to the show, but the reason why you're successful at being a talk show host or a sports talk show host is not because you're a former footballer. It is because the network that you are in facilitated and helped your career in that venture of media. And that is why you're not going to stick your entire moral high ground into this situation.
So it's not a personal thing, rather than being what he takes it be some sort of nationalistic feeling that he's got. And why does he say to Jim White, you know what, I can't work with you, Jim. You went to Saudi, you went and accepted the husband.
Yeah, so why can't you tell Jim, yeah, I can't work with you because you did this? You're not standing on your moral high grounds. You're not really standing on what you truly believe in. You're not standing on it. And Frank Warren is literally tearing you apart right now, letting you know that.
Why is he working with him? You know, he's working because it's money. He does it because it's money. That's why he's doing it. You know, if he'd have owned Crystal Palace and they come in and said, look, you know what, we want to put a lot of money in this, the hair won't be peroxide, but it'd be green. He'd have dyed his hair green. He'd have done anything to have had him in.
That is so true. So what is he talking about with Crystal Palace? Maybe, obviously, look, I'm new to soccer, right? I don't know the history of soccer. I'm probably a casual of soccer. But what I'm gathering out of this is Crystal Palace is probably the team that Simon Jordan either has played for or support or has some kind of investment in to any degree, right? In other words, he has some dog in a fight with Crystal Palace, and he's absolutely correct. If the Saudis were to put money on Crystal Palace the way that they did for Newcastle FC, which, by the way, is a soccer club in Newcastle, by the way, the town that True Geordie is from, guess what? They're going to jump up and down for the Saudis, and they did. These people in Newcastle started wearing these costumes that look like Galabayas with fake Saudi kufias on and everything, just to honor the Saudis for the money that they're bringing into the club. Because guess what? With the more money they have, they can bring in the top players, and guess what? Put their team at a higher standing in the Premier League standings, winnings, and losses column. So nobody really has a problem with it unless it doesn't benefit you in any kind of way. And I think that's just what we're seeing here from Simon Jordan.
He is a hypocrite at the highest order.
He is a hypocrite.
I make money from it. That's what we do. That's what we've invested in our business to deliver the best fights to the fans over the years in our cars, and we're doing it. British boxing, has it suffered? Do you think it's suffered? It's on the back page.
Absolutely not.
Do you think you'll find, you've seen them fights there? Saudi, next in October, first ever women's title fight, getting paid a lot of money for it. Do you think for 1 minute that's bad for British boxing? It's just a complete and utter nonsense. And as for the national anthem,
I was going to ask about that.
You don't have to. I'm going to roll it all off.
So he's going to talk about the national anthem here, which many people were sort of upset about, that Saudi Arabia had decided to put their national anthem up. I say, so what? Every sporting event that has a national anthem is always going to have a national anthem. Who cares? But of course, Simon Jordan has to be all up in arms about it. Oh, the British culture, everything has to be British, this and that. Ha ha. Shut your Nigel Farage ass up.
For the national anthem, every football event I go to, I've been to, international match, boxing events, and normally any other events, the host country's anthem always goes last. That's a fact, okay? Why was the Saudi anthem played? It's in the clue. It's called Riyadh Season. We see all those banners everywhere. It's promoting Riyadh Season.
So in other words, if they are the ones that are able to afford all of this, and they are the ones that can facilitate the money and everything else, you have no choice but to accept it. And that's just what it is. Okay? Like, many people always talk about, oh, it's always has to be the one that has all the money in the world, or this and that. Oh, we're the greatest country ever. Well, guess what? Both of your countries, whether it's the UK or the United States right now, is in serious economic shambles. But guess what? Saudi Arabia is on the rise. These Arab countries are on the rise. And right now it is their turn to do the damn thing, and you have no choice but to accept it. It's just what it is. There are always going to be winners and losers in every generation, in every era, and it just so happens that in this particular case right now, it just so happens that they are the breadwinners of the world and can facilitate these particular matters at hand.
That's what they're paying for. That's what it's about. Are you stupid or something? You do not understand that, people? Simon, you don't get that? You know, why do you have Crystal Palace when you used to have somebody's advertising on their shirt? Because you're selling it. That's what they're doing. It's a commercial venture. And for them, it was about bringing to the attention of Riyadh Season, which he'd done very successfully, and saying to the Brits, listen, we're not taking things away, we're bringing them back here. And that was good for, and I just keep saying it was good for us sport. All these people who keep coming out, finding things wrong with it. What on earth is the matter with you? Empty seats? Few empty seats at the top. You know why they're empty? Because there's a canopy over the ring. If we sell them, I'd be getting sued because you'd be looking at the top of a canopy.
Frank, the last one, obviously.
So what Frank is talking about is a low-hanging fruit that Simon Jordan is talking about how, okay, why is it that this part of this row or whatever was empty or this and that? And Frank Warren just literally explained it because it was a safety issue within the building's safety and regulations parameter. Moving on.
Was a few newspaper reports, etc., online articles regarding the media not being allowed in. That was their opinion.
I get all that. 370 odd media applications. We had less than 100 places for them. Every single national newspaper was accommodated. I only found out about this, by the way, after. You're obviously referring to Ollie Brown.
Yeah.
I found out about that.
So what he's talking about is the accredited media passes that many people were rejected from. And it's surprising that this is news, but I tell you what, I probably would not cover this part if it wasn't for one buddy of mine, by the way, Zain Musa, Boxing Dosage. Obviously, he's tied in with Hamza Shiraz, and they didn't give him accreditation, right? For whatever reason. I don't know what that reason is. I believe that the way Zain puts it is that he has this support for Canelo, and right now Canelo is not the favorite guy for Turki Al-Sheikh because he's so rich, Canelo, right? He's got so much money that I don't think the Sheikh himself could even really shake him in any kind of way. And you got to understand that when it comes to these types of business practices, naturally you're just going to be opposed or against a certain guy. Now, I don't know how true that is, but this is his own accounts, and it could be a reality, it could be not, or it could be just as simple as the limited press that they were able to fulfill in this particular fight. So,
that after the event, but every newspaper was accommodated, every radio station was accommodated, everybody who applied,
So in other words, what Frank Warren is trying to say is that they brought in media that plays ball, okay? Because let's face it, this is a Saudi event. They don't want any bad press. They want positivity in the stories and the message that's being conveyed. And so who better than to bring legacy media into that fold? Well, look, if you want to see the rest of that video, obviously check out Kugan Cassius on IFL interviewing Frank Warren. This is all that I have for this particular matter at hand. Oh, wait, before I do go, let's go all 25 minutes of this. I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes talking about Frank Warren and his little mishaps that he's had going on, right? So over the years, Ricky Burns is one of the boxers that you could sort of cite and say that, you know what, this is the guy that Frank Warren did not pay money to when he should have. I have some explanations for that. Perhaps maybe there are budget issues within boxing companies, because remember, a lot of these guys before the Saudis, they were working with limited funds. They weren't able to make the fights that they needed to make due to the fact that it was quite difficult with the budget issues that they may have had individually depending on what they have going on. So it's not to say that Frank Warren is a bad person or a bad guy or anything like that. I just think that it really falls into the circumstances that he was dealing with at the time. I'll tell you, I've had a few money disputes with friends of mine in the car business. I had one guy who said he wasn't able to pay me because it's rough right now. Well, I said, you still need to pay me my cut. I'm not going to get into the details of how much or what it is or how, but I will say that he owed me a certain amount of money, and his excuse was, well, I can't pay it right now because it's hard. I said, well, that's not my problem. Now, over the years, I've grown resentment against this guy, and it was only a couple of years in later, maybe recent times, where I sort of noticed and realized this is not a bad person. He was just operating under the reality of what his budget has going on right now. It doesn't mean that he was purposely trying to steal from me or anything like that. Now, if it was one of those situations where he has the money and he's able to provide and pay it and still not do it, well then That's a scumbag move. So in other words, the moral to this story is, if Turki Al-Sheikh is such a scumbag, he would not be paying everybody what they are worth. He overpays everybody, which, by the way, I think to a certain extent may create inflation in the world of boxing, because now many people are expecting a certain amount of money and they can't pay the way that the Saudis can pay. But that's the moral of the story. If he was such a bad guy, he would not pay the money even if he can. You're a bad guy if you have the money and you still refuse to pay. You're not necessarily a bad guy if you don't have the money and you can't pay it for whatever reason. But that all depends on certain circumstances. And that is all that I have for this video today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video to come, inshallah.